in Zimbabwe, according to the government-owned Daily Herald. Zimbabwe has awarded civil personnel a 100% salary increase as part of attempts to improve their well-being. The increase, however, is said to keep up barely with inflation, 92% year on year in February. This indicates that the cost of goods continue to rise almost at the same rate as wage increases. According to a statement from the Finance Ministry, the salary revision includes an upgraded $250 COVID-19 allowance for all federal officials and $80 monthly allowance for teachers. Sanyade Okoli, CEO Alpha Africa Advisory, joins us. Good morning to you. So Macky Sall, there's a couple quotes on the Senegal economy from the U.S. State Department and Trade. I don't know if we can take a look at that, but they're glowing. I mean, it says Senegal's stable democracy, relatively strong economic growth, and open economy offer attractive opportunities for foreign investment. Where's the other one? They say as a stable democracy with relatively advanced infrastructure and ambitious plans for expanding private investment, Senegal offers all this good stuff. So does Macky Sall, who says wouldn't be unconstitutional for him to run for a third. Does that upend any of that, in your view?
So I'll start my response with, the two quotes you just showed? There were two words that occurred within the first 3 or 4 words of both quotes. And that was stable democracy.
Aha, yeah.
Senegal has been doing quite well in terms of economic growth. The key indices, unemployment rate, said GDP growth, et cetera, et cetera. But for you to enjoy that kind of economic growth, you need a stable operating environment. And as part of that, a key thing is a stable democracy. Because, let's step back. For economic development, there are three key ingredients.
Yeah.
You need capital, you need infrastructure, and you need talent. And those things are not silos, because at the end of the day, if you take Nigeria, for example, the lack of capital and infrastructure has caused talent to flee.
Right.
So you need to create that environment that attracts the capital you need and the skills that you need to continue to grow. You require political stability,
yes,
economic stability, and social stability.
Yeah.
As you know, well, from our understanding of the Senegalese constitution, he is limited to 2 terms.
Right.
So the moment he tries to run, and for a 3rd term, he could either face what, remember Obasanjo around 2006 to 2007 faced, where the system says no. I would hope so for Senegal's sake, because were he to push himself forward and ensure that he does win, it immediately takes away the first few words they took, which is stable democracy.
Yeah.
And that will have an impact on social stability and economic stability.
Can I bring up China? Is that a fair... Well, Xi Jinping, it was just, earlier this month that was it 2018 or was it 2016 where they cleared he can basically rule for life. So China's the 2nd largest economy in the world. They're doing okay. So if Xi Jinping can rule for life, why can't Macky Sall run for another term?
So I always urge caution in making comparisons.
Yeah.
Not least, you don't just look at what has been done. You need to leave enough time to see the outcomes of what has been done.
Yeah.
So 5 years' time, date on this show, we look at what's happened with the Chinese.
Outcome.
Yes, exactly, the outcome.
Yeah.
Then you can begin to say, well, it worked. Right now, we just know it has occurred, but we don't know that it has worked.
Do you think there'll be significant pressure domestically and internationally on Macky Sall if he was to push forward with this?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah. There's a reason there's a constitution. The constitution, it's like the lane on roads, and he's trying to veer off.
Oh, gotcha.
And,
so there'll be signals and alarms and stuff to get back on there.
Let's stay back on the road.
I like that analogy. Zimbabwe, what do you make of salary increases 100% for the civil servants?
Actually, I should have checked this question and I'll ask.
Yeah.
When are the next set of elections?
Is that this? It's either this year or next year. So yeah. So there you go. That's why. So it's a cynical ploy to try to get some.
Well, Reuters, that came from you. But what I would say, obviously, is when you do have high inflation,
Yeah.
For as long as salary increases are lower than inflation rates, people are getting poorer.
Yeah.
Which does put a whole lot of pressure. And again, I'm always talking about joining the dots. If people are getting poorer, that does have social implications. It also has economic implications because they have less money to spend, et cetera, et cetera. So the less cynical perspective would be that they're trying to ensure that the teachers don't get poorer just before the election.
I accept that answer. But hey, there was a representative of the teachers union who said that the COVID allowance is not enough. I guess you can't make everyone happy when it comes to these negotiations.
I think which would beg the question for most people is, what COVID allowance in 2023?
Right.
And we're not for 1 minute saying that COVID has gone, but I think it's fair to say that where economies were based on COVID in 2020 is very different to where things are in 2023.
Right.
And a very pertinent question is, how affordable are these COVID allowances for them?
Because it was just a couple of years ago where they said they didn't have any money and there was a medical strike in Zimbabwe and coffers were empty according to them.
Yes. Yeah. So when did you say the elections?
The elections are coming up very soon. Okay, but I do have to ask you this. For the private sector, you do performance reviews every year, and salaries are adjusted in that manner. But for governments, where you've got this continued increase in inflation, and if you're trying to raise wages, does that happen now in perpetuity, where you're constantly coming back and having to keep? You see what's happening in the UK, strikes and negotiations here and there, and so on and so forth.
So, I guess the essence of your question, or the thrust of where I see you going, is that the moment you delink pay rise with performance, you remove the incentive for good performance.
Right.
And so what you could well find is that, as we know, public sector, especially on the continent, is often bedeviled with issues and low performance, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But if people think that they're guaranteed a certain percentage of pay rise, whether they turn up to work or not, whether they do a good work or not, then you cause other issues.
Should since you mentioned the public sector, should they mirror the private sector model for increases? The same meritocracy, the same performance, the exact same? Or would that be too stringent and the public sector should have some room,
I think there is an argument for saying that the public sector performance framework should better mirror the private sector. Not least, it may well attract a higher quality of talent to the public sector. But then most countries have these systems, entrenched systems,
that you just can't break out of,
that have been there for decades.
Yeah.
And it would be incredibly naive to think that you could just make a huge and significant shift, just like that, without paying a price. So, you need a certain level of political will,
right,
and political skill to be able to make any such change.
So great point. Now, elections just concluded in Nigeria at the gubernatorial level and state. For the new governors coming in that are looking to switch things up, should the policy be patient? Should there be a lot of patience required when it comes to these raising of salaries and so on and so forth to change these systems over time? Do they know that and expect that?
Should they be patient? Absolutely.
Right.
Do they know that? I am not so sure.
They're right.
So, if were I to be advising government, I'd be saying communicate.
Yeah.
It is key. And it's also about building trust, because with everything, for them to be patient, there's a certain level of trust they need to have to know that, yes, you say you're going to do something. And yes, I trust that you will do it in the best way, at the right time.
Right.
So there's that work that needs to be done.
Fuel subsidies in Nigeria, end of June. We'll see whether that's yanked away. A whole lot to look into this year. Always a pleasure having you. Sanyade Okoli, CEO, Alpha African Advisory. Thank you so much.